Open mic session is designed to provide an opportunity for citizens to express their views on matters of concern to the school committee. The sessions are not designed to encourage debate or lengthy exchange of views, but are to have the committee understand numerous points of view. The committee would appreciate speakers keeping their presentation to 3 minutes in order to accommodate as many people as time permits. The chair reserves the right to limit the number of speakers in the same topic to 3. All speakers must be at least 18 years of age or enrolled in high school in the Lynn Public Schools District and having discussed their views with a student government representative. The chair reserves the right to rule the speaker out of order if they feel the speaker's comments are personal in nature. If a speaker's comments are directed at a school committee member or a member of school administration in attendance, that member, through the chair, may address the individual. The sessions will promptly commence 15 minutes prior to the start of the regular school committee meeting. Is there anyone wishing to speak at open mic? Please state your name and address.
My name is Kelly Jean, and I'm here on behalf of my daughter, Alicia Jean.
You can please have a seat if you like, yeah, and then that way you can speak in the microphone and people will be able to hear you from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mic to you.
Yep. Thank you.
So I'm here on behalf of my daughter, Alicia Jean. We live at 75 Myrtle Street in Lynn, and I'm here because there's a rule that's in place right now for students that transfer from one Lynn public school to another, and they are not able to play, I guess, sports if they transfer from one school to another without sitting out a year. The problem that I have with the rule is that I moved to Myrtle Street, which is located close to Classical, but my daughter was at Lynn English for the last 3 years. So at the end of the school year this year, I transferred her from Lynn English to Lynn Classical, not knowing that even that this rule existed. It didn't have anything to do with it. So we moved back to Myrtle Street, and I'm there now. So we moved from Edge Hill Road, which is kind of like behind Jenna Street in Lynn. I don't know if anybody knows where it is, but I was living with my stepmom, me and my daughter. So I tell my daughter that I transferred her, that we're gonna be at the house and blah, blah, blah. And she lets me know that there's this rule in place that she was advised by the athletic director at the end of the school year. So I go and meet with the athletic director. He tells me that there's well, first I went and met with Amy Dunn from Lynn Classical, and she was like, oh, I'll send an email to Colleen. There's a process for an appeal, all this stuff. So I was like, oh, okay. So she's like, oh, don't worry, she'll be fine. I'm going to talk to Bill. That's the director at Classical. So I said, let me call and see if I can go meet with Dick Newton. Like, I wanted to give him a heads up. Like, I felt like they were trying to act like I was trying to be like scandalous almost. Like, my daughter's now leaving Lynn English and going to Classical. And I'm like, so I go to meet with Dick, and I'm like, so we're moving from here to here. And he's like, yeah, that's irrelevant to the rule. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, we're going to live around the corner from Lynn Classical. I'm like, so I need to be able to just let my daughter go to school, but she's a senior. She's been playing basketball her whole life since she's like 4 years old, but soccer too. So we've already missed the soccer season. And so she's having a hard time because a lot of the girls that are on the Lynn Classical soccer team are friends of hers, and they, So I told her that I would just come here and see, because I've spoken to several members of the school committee. Everybody's tried to help me, and I really appreciate it. But I just, as a mom, I can't let it go, because I feel like my daughter has only been at Lynn Classical for, we've been in school not even 2 weeks. She already took the initiative to take herself out of just the general classes and move to AP English and AP Math, which before she wouldn't even go speak to anybody, So I feel like the reason that I felt like Classical was better for her, I was right. But I feel like this is almost like penalizing her. It's killing her. She has type 1 diabetes. So I met with her diabetes doctor yesterday, and Alicia she doesn't like to get me upset. So she's like, not really talking and whatever. And the doctor's like, what's going on? I'm like, I'll step out of the room. So I let them talk. I can hear her hysterical crying in the room. So I go back in and I'm like, what is going on? And the doctor's like, she's having a lot of anxiety around like what school she's going to go to and what she's going to do. And I'm like, well, we transferred her to classical. We know it's a better move for her. She's like, yes, but she feels like she doesn't belong anywhere, because at least when she knew she had the sports team, she knew that at least she would be included in something, you know? So I'm just here to plead my case and see if anybody can help me to help my daughter to, I mean, she's not the top scorer. She's not like someone that has like these stats, and, you know, I feel like the rule makes sense for the recruiting part, like that I think used to happen a lot for different sports. Nobody from Lynn Classel has called and asked my daughter to come to be on their basketball team, nor their soccer team, besides her friends and their moms. Like, I promise it's not a recruiting. She's going to North Shore to become a rad tech. Like, she just wants to get a certificate and start working. She's just, this is like one last thing that is like literally eating her up. And I just felt like if I came here and pled my case, that maybe somebody can help me, help us. I know that I've gotten a lot of no's, but I'm just trying. And I did go to the meeting last night, which was great, to try to get involved. I'm like, oh, maybe this is my calling now, right? Like, I'll be like all involved or whatever, but, so that's my case. So I don't know if anybody has any advice or recommendations, but I'm happy to give you my email or my phone number if there's someone I should contact.
Thank you so much. We will certainly take your email and contact information.
Okay.
We can't discuss in this
Yeah,
forum.
exactly.
Yeah, but we definitely will take the contact information.
Okay.
Really appreciate you sharing.
I appreciate
Yeah.
your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak at open mic? Anyone for open mic? Nope. You should state your name and address, please.
My name is Adriana Paz, 56 Henry Ave, apartment 3. I'm here tonight because of a vote that you guys are going to have regarding protective sweeps. And one of the things that worries me is that we don't know the specifics of this plan, the research behind it, the effectiveness around it. And I'm concerned that there's going to be a vote without parents really knowing what this entails and how successful this program actually is. And if that success outweighs any of the issues, potential issues that it will bring for students. And part of the issues that I worry about is the kind of effects, the trauma that's gonna happen to students who have who have this kind of program in their school, and does that really outweigh this so-called need for safety, and whether this program will provide safety in the school, as opposed to the feeling of safety in the school. So I just want to come in and talk about, just put my concerns out there, and make sure that we have research that was provided to parents, that was provided to the public at large before we vote on something like this, showing where you deem this is successful enough to implement. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sign it.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak at open mic? Anyone else for open mic? Thank you. If you could just state your name and address, please. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. You can sit. Yeah, I don't want to sit. So hi, my name is Maria Perez. I've lived in the city of Lynn for 44 years, and it's a great place to live. We have a lot to offer, but there's one area I'm really concerned about, and it's the schooling and education. I'm an educator, and I'm really concerned about our children in our city and what they're being taught. And I know Lynn has a wide variety of ethnic families. I know a lot of them. I'm connected with a lot of them. And there's some things that are being taught, especially in the area of sexual curriculum, that I really object to for children to be exposed to it. And I'd like to stand here and ask you as a school committee to provide opportunities for parents who find it objectionable to be able to opt out and help their children not have to sit through surveys, instruction that their family finds objectionable. So I really would like to see what the school committee is going to do in terms of advocating for parents so that they can have their say regarding their children. Children are their parents' children. They should have a say in what's being taught. And I know you work hard, and I know you screen a lot of your curriculum, and you make wise choices. But I think this would be a really wise choice on behalf of parents and children to allow the parents to opt out. Let the parents know what's being taught, when it's being taught, how it's being taught, and that they can opt out and say, no, my child, I'm not going to let my child sit through that. I have 10 grandchildren. I'm very invested in the future, especially of children. So I'd like to see different perspectives and having people and parents to be able to adhere to their values and their beliefs. And we are a democracy, are we not? We should have all voices at the table, and people should have the right to have their viewpoint and their opinion and their values respected. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak at open mic? Anyone for open mic? Last call for open mic. All right, we will close the open mic and move into the 13th regular meeting of the school committee. Roll call, please.
Member Castellanos?
Present.
Member Capola?
Present.
Member Dugan?
Present.
Member Gately?
Present.
Member Magnolia?
Present.
Member Pena?
Present.
Mayor Nicholson?
Present. Well, please rise for a salute to the flag and remain standing for a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence to remember Loretta Pohl, retired lunch aide, passed July 19th, 2023. Linda Scatina, retired teacher, July 28th, 2023. Laurel Feinberg, retired teacher, August 1st, 2023. Rebecca Walsh, teacher, August 7th, 2023. Thank you. First item, we have minutes.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of the public hearing on the budget on June 22nd, 2023, the Curriculum Subcommittee meeting on June 22nd, 2023, Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee meeting on June 22nd, 2023, Personnel Subcommittee meeting on June 22nd, 2023, second special meeting on June 22nd, 2023, Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee meeting on June 29th, 2023, Personnel Subcommittee meeting on June 29th, 2023, and the 12th regular meeting on June 29th, 2023, and the Policy Subcommittee meeting on August 22nd, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Appointments. And a welcome to Superintendent Alvarez for her first meeting in this chair.
Thank you. Thank you and good evening. Tonight, we want to share three special appointments. Mr. Robert Bishop is our interim executive director of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and he's actually with us this evening. Dr. Rardy Pena, he is our new principal at Lynn English High School, and he is not with us this evening, but I'm sure he's listening and he knows that we were going to acknowledge him tonight. And then our third appointment is also not able to be present. Ms. Julie Ward, Interim Assistant Director of Data Assessment and Accountability. She is just moving from our curriculum and instruction team over to the new data team. So those are the three appointments to share.
Thank you.
Congratulations to all of them.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Excited for all of you. Congratulations. All right, next is district prioritization.
Good evening. Congratulations on a new school year. I'm Molly Cohen, Interim Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Deputy Superintendent Kim Powers. We're going to take you through the district prioritization. This is a quick overview of where district prioritization came from, what our district prioritization is going to look like. So this is unusual to have norms for a presentation because this is actually going to be a conversation. So the district prioritization is a living, breathing document. That means that it's going to go through many iterative cycles. We're going to need your feedback and your input as stakeholders for the prioritization plan. So at the end of this presentation, we'll be taking notes and taking your input to ensure that we are updating this document. The document is actually submitted to the DESE as a live Google document, which means that it is constantly being updated and edited. When we engage in the work, I'm going to ask that you focus on 3 priority norms that we have when we engage in the work, which is centering the student experience in what we're doing. So when we're thinking about planning, we're thinking first and foremost of what that means for students. Engaging in authentic collaboration grounded in honest conversations. So we're bringing up challenges, but we're looking for solutions to those challenges. And finally, in this presentation, we're only nodding to the past as we look to the future. So when I give a little description of where we came from, that's a nod. And then we're really talking about the path forward. So we use the compass because everything we do is going to be grounded in the district prioritization. So this is going to be our planning for our school improvement plans. It's going to be our planning for our student learning goals and our professional practice goals. So this is like our North Star. So what is district prioritization and where did it come from? I actually don't want to distract you, so I'm going to pull back before I go forward. District prioritization is new. So before district prioritization, school sustainability and school turnaround happened primarily in the schools, not at the district level. And so what that meant was, given our accountability system, when a school was under 10%, then they would be targeted as a turnaround school that would require assistance. Or if a school performed above 10%, but they had a subgroup that performed in the low, below 5% actually, compared to other subgroups in the state, then they were considered sustainability, so requiring assistance. So as you know, Classical in Washington were turnaround schools based on data prior to the COVID pandemic, and Thurgood Marshall was a sustainability school because our Asian subgroup did not perform as compared to other Asian subgroup across the state. Okay, so what's shifted is that when a school was identified, a DESE liaison would come in and work with the school, and there would be membership from the district on that team, but it was the school that carried the weight of that responsibility. So as we go forward, what happened is in 2022, so as you know, 2020, no accountability. 2021, we took a test, but it also didn't count. And then 2022, the state recognized that was an extremely difficult year, as you'll remember, 21, 22. And there was horrendous chronic absenteeism, scores were low, so they considered 2022 an accountability light year. So we took the accountability test, the MCAS test in Massachusetts, but schools were not targeted, they were not named or categorized, but they were given additional funds. So what happened to Classical, Thurgood Marshall, and Washington, they froze. So in 2020, they froze as sustainability and turnaround schools. In 2022, Ingalls and Lynn English dropped below that 10% mark. They were not categorized as turnaround, but we received funds to support efforts to improve the instruction there. And so that didn't happen until January of 2023. So there's a whole delay last year in terms of schools receiving funding to get the support that they needed. Now, meanwhile, the DESE had new membership come into the statewide system of support, the SSOS, and they decided to restructure how districts are supporting schools across the board. And so what they determined was, rather than schools carrying the weight and having a lot of reports and a lot of extra work and burden on them, they determined that instead they would shift to a lighter model, which we're going to show you, the district prioritization plan, less paperwork, less heavy reports and documents, but that it would sit at the district and that all schools would benefit what we identify as best practices. And so it's more flexible, and like I shared earlier, the document is live, and so we're constantly going to be in an iterative cycle of improvement. So our biggest levers that we identified were equity, professional development, data literacy, frequent observations, and learning walkthroughs. What is a trend across the state is the investment in high-quality instructional materials to remove the load of teachers to have to find materials that may not be peer-edited or vetted or grade level. So now we have high-quality instructional materials that are vetted through EdReport and Curate to ensure they're culturally and linguistically appropriate for all diverse learners, that there are interventions involved, and that all students will be able to receive Tier 1 instruction, which is that grade level instruction with supports. That is our biggest move. And then in regards to how we're going to support that is through a professional development arc of work with walkthroughs, progress monitoring, data analysis throughout. This is just a quick to show you an example of the support that we get. So there is a huge coherence guidance. It's very robust. We go through a process, but it always focuses on instructional design, tier supports, and systems and structures. The year prior, we started with systems and structures. So in 2022-2023, that's when we implemented, as our school improvement planning, systems instructions for improvement in terms of the ILT, instructional leadership teams, PLCs. We were trying to bring together the district on one common goal, that where teams are working together. And always there's vision involved. So when we ask for your input, the guiding question is, to what extent are our current systems organized in alignment with deeper learning for all students? So we're talking about, do we have the equity-minded vision? Do we have instructional design that supports all students and certainly keeps the rigor at that Tier 1, that grade level? And what are we doing for students when they're slipping between tiers? If they need additional support, we have to ensure that we have that system in place and that we're using data to analyze student progress. Okay. So now I'm almost about to switch it over to Ms. Powers. I just want to tell you what happened last year. So we got the Accountability Light 2022, and that last year was a full year of design for district prioritization. So we worked with the DESE liaisons all through the fall, winter, and spring. We were involved in a district prioritization institute in the spring, as were all other districts as well. And then throughout the year, we analyzed our data to target a marginalized group that needed the most support. And so the group that we landed on was the language learners 1 and 2. So those first year, second year English language learners. And then throughout that process, many stakeholders were involved in the planning of the district prioritization, the communication, feedback, and input, all the way to most recently when Deputy Superintendent Maricel Goris joined us. Her voice also was incorporated. She had the student-centered voice around ensuring that student surveys are involved in the work that we do. So these are the 8 priority areas, and in the guidance document, we went through professional development on all 8 of these categories, and then we had to come up with a plan. So Ms. Powers is going to carry you through that.
Okay, thank you, Mom.
You're welcome.
Okay, the district prioritization plan is broken down into 8 priority areas that you see here outlined. In the next few slides, I will discuss and share thoughts on the aim statement that captures the essence of the vision, the work, and the big ideas that will be the focus of our district leaders, our school leaders, and our educators across the district. We will look at strengths and challenges as it relates to the identified priority. We will share the stakeholder engagement in creating the plan, identify what will be used to benchmark progress and assess desired outcomes, discuss role clarity and provide a vertically aligned delineation of roles and responsibilities for district leaders, school leaders, and educators, share how we will monitor implementation of the priority area or aim statement, discuss the resources to be utilized, and share out the assistance and differentiation for our schools identified as requiring assistance. Step 1 is our aim statement, and as was noted previously, the aim statement captures the essence of the work and the big ideas. The development of that aim statement is supported by data. Our aim statement is: in planning for high-quality, responsive learning experiences, educators are able to unpack language demands of grade-appropriate standards and develop and provide data-driven, reader-aligned scaffolds to support L1 and L2 students to access and achieve success with grade-level tasks. Just to reinforce and extract those big ideas, we're talking here about high-quality, standards-based, rigorous Tier 1 instruction, focus on L1 and L2s, focus on WIDA standards, integration and scaffolding, focus on data capacity and response, and assessment. Step 2 in this process emphasizes the data that led us to our priority and our aim statement, and it is our L students, specifically L1s and L2s, that are our priority group. What is the data and what did it tell us? The data tells us that there is a significant growth in the English learner population. That's something we are all very well aware of. The data tells us there is lagging English language proficiency levels. Yet we only reached 34% in access. Our goal was 49%. Essentially, in this school year, there was almost no progress at all. There is historically high dropout data for Ls, 11.1% compared to 4.3% for the overall population. Historically low MCAS scores, and a lack of assessment data for L1s and L2 students. And an important challenge, teacher assignment data shows that the least qualified educators are working with our earliest proficient Ls. In this process and analysis, we also identified underlying systemic factors contributing to the equity gaps and poor student outcomes for our Ls, especially our L1s and our L2s. In instruction, a lack of understanding of language acquisition and the targeted supports needed, a need for more depth of knowledge in lesson planning and curriculum implementation as it relates to Ls, the teacher shortage and crisis in hiring of staff on emergency licenses and waivers, lack of application of professional development in pedagogical practices and in content, exclusionary tracking practices, structures for Ls in their academic progression of studies, and as I just noted, teacher assignment data that shows our least qualified educators paired with L1s and L2s. Am I on right now? Okay. Our next focus is on who are the stakeholders in formulating this plan. As Molly outlined earlier, this plan began being formulated over last school year by a team of district leaders. She also highlighted for you the shift by DESE in the model from a school-based focus to a district focus as it relates to schools requiring assistance. The stakeholders formulating this plan included all relevant district departments, including curriculum and instruction, special education, MLE, as well as the superintendent's office. There was also engagement with principals and ILTs across the district with the aim statement to garner feedback on the focus areas. And just a reminder to the committee, this plan will constantly adjust to feedback and respond to data. The next part of the plan focuses on how the district and our schools will track progress related to the established priority of the aim statement. The overarching goal is to meet or exceed DESE-determined accountability targets. Throughout this school year, we will use progress monitoring tools and systems such as Star Renaissance, iReady, end-of-unit assessments in illustrative math, Envision, MyView, StudySync to inform instruction, next steps, and measure growth. In our data analysis, we'll have a keen focus on our L1 and L2 students. The next 3 slides will inform you of the strategies to be implemented by all stakeholders and provide clarification on the roles and responsibilities in implementing the prioritization plan. What are the roles and expectations for district leaders, for school leaders, and educators in implementing? What you should see in the next 3 slides is the expectations for each stakeholder group and how they mirror one another and how they're vertically aligned. Here you have all of the district roles outlined. The district role is to set a clear vision for and support the agendas of ILTs and PLCs both at the district and the school level, create curriculum maps with WIDA integration, build capacity of all leaders in the new WIDA framework and WIDA-aligned scaffolding, assure an assessment focus for level 1 and 2 Ls as well as students with disabilities, set clear expectations for the MTSS framework, both academic and non-academic, build capacity and practices across data capacity and practices across the district, strengthen coaching structures at all levels, and champion the needs of marginalized students. So that was the district leaders and the district focus. Outlined next are the school leadership roles and responsibilities that cover and address the same big ideas that were outlined for district leaders, but with some nuanced differences. School-based leaders will support the agendas of school-based ILTs and PLCs, articulate a shared understanding of effective lesson planning and how to plan with intentional scaffolds, support and monitor implementation of curriculum maps with WIDA integration, assure an assessment focus for level 1 and 2 Ls as well as students with disabilities, set clear expectations for the MTSS framework, support educator data literacy and capacity, strengthen and support coaching structures, and again, just like district leaders, champion the needs of our marginalized students. Should have handed you this. In our final slide with role clarity, we will see how the expectations and foci reach our educators in support of high-quality, rigorous, standards-based Tier 1 instruction. The teacher's role is to commit to active involvement in PLCs, plan for that high-quality, rigorous instruction, implement content and language objectives, commit to uniform assessment practices, implement WIDA standards and scaffolds, utilize the coaching structures, and champion the needs of our most marginalized students. There are nuances in some discrete changes to the foci in the roles and expectations of each of the stakeholder groups, but the big ideas here are uniform across all 3. Step 6 in the process is about the internal systems and structures to monitor the implementation of the plan. Again, Molly referenced this. There'll be a research-based cycle of improvement, the importance of ILTs and PLCs as key structures in this change effort process, and also supporting their agendas. An expectation of learning walks across the district in all schools to monitor instructional expectations. Use of iReady. It's under my throat. Use of iReady, Star Renaissance, and unit assessments to benchmark progress. Thank you. Also, use of stakeholder surveys. Sorry.
I don't think the material is this dry.
Well, no, it could be. It could be. Molly, I love you. Step 7 are the resources that will be leveraged in support of the plan. We note here the leadership team from DESE, who we meet with regularly, high-quality instructional materials and adoptions, district-created mapping documents with WIDA integration, the DESE MTSS framework, use of grants. Again, we mention here the importance of those key structures for change, ILT, PLC, but also our school improvement planning process, as well as our district improvement planning process. I don't know what's going on.
Take your time.
Want a mint?
No, I'm good. I'm going to get through this. Other key resources are the leadership opportunities being provided through Lynch, BC Lynch, Center for Artistry and Scholarship for our leaders, as well as our Harvard Fellow Program. Digital platforms that will support benchmarking and understanding of progress and next steps. Standards-based PD that will play out. And also, I want to mention the new departments that will be key resources in our change efforts, our Office of Data Assessment and Accountability, Innovation and Grants, as well as DEI. The last step in this plan is how...
One that coughs out.
Oh, my.
I'm going to get through. The last step in the...
There you go.
No, one before that. Yep.
The last step in this plan is how the district intends to differentiate support for schools identified as requiring assistance. Remember, there has been a shift in DESE guidance. The shift is in thinking that all schools will benefit from the sustainable improvement process and subsequent identified focus areas for change. However, there is an expectation of differentiated support for those schools that require assistance. In school year 22-23, we had 5 schools identified as requiring assistance. 2 of the 5 were newly identified, Ingalls and English, as Molly, Ingalls and English, as Molly had identified. What you see here is those 5 schools, and where Washington was in the 2nd percentile, Classical in the 3rd, and so on. This list will be updated in a formal presentation once accountability data is released to the public. The district plan for differentiation is intense data assistance to support. Thank you, Molly. Intense data assistance to support educators and school leaders in data use and data literacy. PLC guidance, especially in lesson planning with culturally and linguistically proficient practices. Developing department heads, program specialists, CITs, coaches as both content and linguistic experts. Assistant directors and CNI assigned to support schools on a bi-weekly basis. Assistant directors and directors in our data assessment team, MLE, SPED, Innovation, and Grants also assigned to support these schools. District ELD, math, and ELA coaching support prioritized. Focus on high-quality instructional materials for L1s and L2s, and focus on accessing grade-level content and resources. Now Molly is going to provide us with some highlights and concluding statements on prioritization.
Thank you. All right, we're almost there, and then we're going to get your input. So these slides are just to really bring it all home. So after all of what was shared, the real highlights of this plan are data analysis and responsive instruction. So we can't provide the instruction students need if we're not looking and analyzing their learning in the data. So we have to respond to the data. And then having those uniform school and district ILTs and PLCs, that's where the professional development's going to happen. That's where the development for for teaching our leaders and our content experts around the language acquisition piece that goes hand in hand. So that's where we're going to dive in with WIDA and the content standards. We're developing a coaching model. We have several in the district, but we're going to come together, pool all of our best practices together, and then have a uniform process, that we can assess in the quality of the coaching. And so that's where we're really going to work with the DAT team in order to come up with some measures for what does effective coaching look like and how do we see that in the outcomes for our students. And then the professional development arc that I referenced before is really based in that tiered instruction approach, where we're providing the high quality instructional materials with support at that level 1, but we're also constantly monitoring the student learning and ensuring that they're receiving the scaffolds that they need, and most importantly, removing the scaffolds when they no longer need them. Because if you have a scaffold in place, you've just removed the rigor. So we need to be flexible with our teaching and our learning. And so our quote here around the equity lens is, without systems and prioritization of practices, everything is just another initiative working in isolation rather than used strategically to build a culture of continuous improvement at the classroom, school, and district level, particularly for our students with disabilities and English learners. And this is why we have a district prioritization plan and not individual school sustainability plans. And then the final thing is our goals as a curriculum office and as a district team is to be constantly leveraging those materials, looking at the data outcomes, discussing the supports that students need and implementing them, calibrating the leadership coaching practices, and then calibrating the coaching model. So now you get to play with us, and we're going to take your notes and we're going to incorporate it into the plan. So this part is for you. What's coming up for you around the information and the plan presented?
Remember, we can go down the line if we want. We'll start. Remember, Gaither, do you want to start or?
Oh, I got to get my thoughts
All right,
together.
we'll start with member Dugan and then come down and come this way. Yeah, member Dugan.
All right. Thank you. And I don't think that's dry at all, actually. As being an educator, I'm just as jazzed as you about it, so wasn't dry at all. So a couple thoughts as I was looking through this last night at home. I love the shift to the MTSS supports. I love that you guys it's student-centered. All these things are great. So the only question, a couple questions I have is the walkthroughs. Are those meant to be evaluating teachers at the time, or are they, okay?
Thank you. I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you asked that
Okay.
question. So the learning walkthroughs, I don't know if you're familiar with
yeah.
big level learning walkthroughs that have been conducted in the past. That's not what we're looking at. So the purpose of the learning walkthrough is to have as least an impact on the instruction that's happening in the building. So it would be a smaller team. It would be targeted for what that school's goals are. There would be just a few members on that team, and it is anonymous and non-evaluative. It's to identify trends and patterns that are happening across the school and whether they're meeting their own benchmarks for the goals they set.
Okay. And those would be done by the principals
Yes,
and the teams? Okay.
yes, and teams, and then district leadership, because
Yeah.
really,
And also teachers within the
And
building.
Teachers within the building as well. Okay. All right.
Right.
That's great.
but we just don't want a large team
Absolutely.
going
Yeah,
in.
that can be disruptive to
Right.
the lesson. So, yeah, my only insight on that would be just to make sure, reassure teachers that it's a shift, and it's definitely, being somebody that's experienced that, it can be intimidating, to have a team of your superintendent and principals and walking in for a walkthrough. So just, that would be my one thought there. Kim, you look like you wanted to.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in terms of the district people assigned to the schools, we really try to have a consistent person who's working with that school, who has an investment, who's knowledgeable. and who the staff come to know.
Great.
Historically, that's how we have.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
And actually, Member Dugan, I just want to exemplify how we do take your feedback. So in the spring, when we were talking about the dropout data, you had asked questions around what did our wraparound services look like for our L students, and that is also being woven into this
Thank you. I
plan.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. And then the MTSS supports, that can be, again, a shift in teaching. Again, it's the way I'm teaching now, which is a shift. If a child is, they're experiencing the Tier 1 within the classroom, let's say third grade classroom, teaching consonant blends, which could really be happening right now, and a child's having trouble with that, how would the Tier 2 supports kick in? Would it be another teacher comes in, a pull-out, push-in? Just maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So the focus this year, though, before we move to Tier 2, is Tier 1 with supports.
Sure. Okay.
With supports. So we're doing a lot of work in our district PLCs with the leaders around distinguishing between in small group, centers, what is a Tier 1 with support to ensure that the rigor is there, and then after several attempts, or the data is showing a trend that they're not able to master that, then what is the additional intervention that they need?
All right.
And the model is mostly push into the class
Great. I
in
love
the
to hear
schools.
that. Thank you. And then I know DESI's requiring more reports home. I think it starts in third grade, actually, with if a child is receiving Tier 2 supports, Tier 3 supports. How are we doing that? How are we communicating with parents should children need these supports?
Yep. Are you referring to the early literacy?
Yeah.
Yep. So we have a team right now,
Okay.
and we're in the process right now of determining. So as you know, it's part of the dyslexia law.
Yeah.
But what we're doing right now with the team is assessing the actual screener that we're using, and then what is the response for the letter. But we will be sending a letter home, and that's what the team is working on. What are the interventions that we're using? But remember, at the beginning of the year, it's just we're recognizing where they hit on the screener, but we're going to look at further data in terms of what we're fearful about when we talk about MTSS is pushing students or pigeonholing students or even labeling students as needing a level 2 or a Tier 2 or a Tier 3 before we've given several attempts at the Tier 1 with support.
Okay.
So it's a careful balance. That first letter is just to say that this is where your child landed on the screener and how they're being identified.
Thank you.
And a key piece to that is the data-informed piece and using the data, understanding the data, and then responding to individual student needs around that data.
Right.
And also the fluidity of the group, so children are not stuck
coming
in a
and
group.
going, right,
But also
absolutely.
understanding just because a child receives support in small group, that could be Tier 1 level response.
Okay.
And the platforms have the intervention suites too.
Okay, right, great, thank you. And then my last question, I'm sorry, I'm kind of hogging the mic here, but my last question, the curriculum maps you mentioned, who will be creating with the WIDA data? Who's going to create those maps?
Content areas.
Yeah, so the MLE office has been wonderful. I have to publicly name Stacy Floyd, who has been really leading that work in the elementary. And so she has been working side by side with the assistant directors in each of the content, particularly in elementary, but Amy DeRosa as well at the high school level, in building capacity. So ultimately, you don't always have to have an MLE person on the team to weave in the WIDA standards, because we're all responsible for the WIDA standards. So at this time, it's in collaboration, but that's the whole idea of this district prioritization plan, is to build that capacity.
Okay, great. And I appreciate you taking our feedback. I think this is going to be some great teamwork we got going here, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm ready.
Member Gately.
Okay. First of all, I really appreciate this. I love the quote. You missed this. It says, "We don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems." And that says volumes to me. My question, I have a couple on step 8. I didn't quite understand what the letters C and I mean.
Curriculum instruction.
Thank you. And then DAAT?
Data Assessment and Accountability Team.
Thank you. All right, so you know that I'm a pretty real person all the time. So how did this work this fall? Like last year, looking back, we had a lot of upset teachers. And I just want to make sure that the breakout this year went smooth.
In terms of this plan?
In terms of the school year, like they had the resources, they had what they needed, they had.
High-quality instructional materials emphasized here.
Yes.
Right?
Did it
You
happen?
see- Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I want
yeah.
to know.
And there's professional development to support all that HQIM and all of those rollouts. What you see here is an emphasis on supporting instructional leadership teams and teachers in PLC to really affect high-quality instructional planning. What you see in here is support for teachers' understanding and implementation of the WIDA standards and the WIDA scaffolding. This plan is really focused in on empowering district leaders, school leaders, and educators with all of the same things.
Okay, and then the other thing was, I was very happy to see that the time support for ELs and students with disability. I'm more curious to see what happens in the high school with our ELs and student with disabilities. I know that our ELs in our elementary schools, we had to adjust, cater to the standards. So I just want to make sure that our ELs and student with disabilities on all levels are being addressed appropriately to the teachers. You know, I get the phone calls from the teachers, and if something isn't working, and thank you all for calling me, because I wouldn't know if you didn't tell me, but I just want to make sure that this, I don't mind hearing from people, but I just want to make sure that their needs are being met, so our students' needs are being met, so the hierarchy in this program, process.
Yep, just as there's a focus at the elementary level on high quality, that high quality instructional materials focus goes from pre-K all the way up to grade 12. The focus on, we know that the assessment piece for our L1s and L2s is an area we need to focus on, and that will be, especially at the secondary level, will be a focus. You know, I mean, I think everything that's outlined here is universal from elementary all the way up.
Thank you. That's my questions. I'm done for today. Thank you.
Member Magdalena.
Thank you very much. So I want to talk about the differences between the elementary and the secondary level, because one of the things that was really clear when you were going through the schools is that now it's both of our main secondary schools that are in that category. And I don't think it's any surprise that where we see significant overcrowding is not in our elementary schools, but there. So how are we going to address class sizes in this? Because if we're talking about, you know, L1s and L2s, we know that it's that work that teachers are doing with the students that really is going to make a difference. And, you know, I know we have enrollment volatility in our high schools. I know that teachers will start out with maybe 12 or 14 students at the beginning of the year and end up with a lot more by the end of the year. And this is a little bit out of our control, but how can we ensure, as this plan goes forward, that something super basic structurally at the secondary level is not going to tank a really well thought out and articulated plan that you can have all the high quality instruction material in the world, and if you've got 40 students in the class, you can't You can't deal with it. You just can't. So can we sort of deal with the realities of what the teachers are facing given our enrollment volatility at the secondary level specifically? I mean, I can see that this is maybe one of the challenges in going from a school model to a district model, is that, when you look at the district as a whole, this is really only an issue in Marshall and in English, right? Some of these schools are way in a very precarious situation with regards to overcrowding.
Yeah, so I can say that the district leadership team is thinking about this constantly on a space assessment, evaluation of where we do have space, where we don't have space, and how to really plan around that. I think right now I can't answer that question because I'm not part of the space assessment, but it is certainly pressing on everybody's minds.
Thank you for the question, Member Magnolia. And Molly's absolutely right. We have discussed as an executive leadership team where are the possibilities of expansion and being able to reduce some of the class sizes at the grade 6 through 12 overall, and really looking at what is the programming that we can offer in other spaces that we currently are exploring, and how would that look for next fall, for example. The other statement I want to make to caution the assumption, right, that it's only about space. I think, once our full accountability data is released and we can talk about what is currently embargoed and what we need to discuss in terms of what are the strategies around and the rigorous instruction that we need to focus on for our English language learners, really will identify, and I think will shed some more light on some of the pedagogy and the methods that were shared during the district prioritization presentation on how we really need to integrate those WIDA standards with our content standards. So I think hopefully by the end of this month, or maybe during the first meeting in October that we have, when we reconvene at that time, we'll be able to discuss that further.
I have one more question, if that's okay, which is, at the secondary level, what kinds of opportunities for cross-disciplinary collaboration are there? And the reason I'm asking this is, again, the difference between the elementary and the secondary level, right? One teacher delivering science, ELA, right, can build that language acquisition because there's continuity. Without cross-disciplinary planning time, without collaboration like that, then some of these standards end up being fragmented because there is not necessarily a solid understanding of how that scaffolding works across disciplines. So I wanted to see if there was either opportunity built into this, or if there could be opportunity built into this for cross-disciplinary, I don't know if it's not really even about curricular alignment. It could be pedagogical approach. It could be how scaffolding is being offered. Like I'm going to use an example from higher ed just because this is what works in my brain. If I'm teaching Comp 1 and someone else is teaching Comp 2, if our Blackboard shells look the same, it actually helps students to be successful as they transition from one class to the next. Mm-hmm. We're totally different teachers. We're teaching totally different things, but just that level of continuity can actually help students' success. And I'm thinking about that with regards to the high quality materials, but also with how those supports work with the tier 1, right? So if it looks the same in biology as it does in history, then sometimes those kinds of things help students to be more successful. And the only way you'd figure that out is for the biology teacher and the history teacher to be able to sit down together and say, okay, when this comes up, how do you offer this support? And so I think that cross-disciplinary time together is just worth its weight in gold, and we don't often give it enough attention.
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent point. So I don't have the answer in regards to whether or not they use like a housing housing system for 9th grade and 10th grade, and whether they're using similar practices in order to sort of shelter those students. I can say your example around your platform is sort of like with our Schoology when we brought it on board. Teachers were doing the same, setting up the folders by week or et cetera, et cetera. We have two different models. So in the comprehensive high schools, it's very traditional. So you have a very diverse schedule of electives and courses that might be even intergrade, so because they're not grade dependent. We do have a cohort model for the L1s and L2s where they have maps that have the ELA standards and the U.S. History 1 standards, that's grade 9, with the social justice standards as well. It's not interdisciplinary like it was K-2. It's very different. It's really a shared map, but it talks about the same themes. I'm really excited to work with the high schools this year around what they are doing in order to sort of cohort students so that they're receiving the supports that you're speaking about. Mm-hmm. I can't say whether or not they're in place right now, but it's an excellent point, and I'm going to bring it back to those teams.
Thank you.
Member Castellanos? Oh, did you?
I just wanted to share that one of the primary reasons that this plan is different from what's happened in the past is what Molly and Kim were speaking to in terms of the mapping of those content standards that the assistant directors are doing within the content areas that reinforce the WIDA standards and what that looks like. And it's the same standards in each of those areas. Mm-hmm. So it will do exactly that reinforcement. And it wasn't always necessarily built in for teachers that way. Mm-hmm. So minimizing that load for teachers, I think will make a tremendous difference in the language acquisition for students.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for your presentation and providing us with the in-depth, just robust planning process that we're going to be enduring. I do have when I saw nod to the past as we look to the future, I kept on just thinking about the strategic plan that we have in place, that we are now really at the end of that. I feel like would this be a process that we execute first before we go into the next phase of a strategic plan, just to give us a pure, I hate to say the word audit, but like more of a deeper system understanding of ourselves? Is that something that we're putting in to our future plans?
So just as Dr. Tutwiler came in the last year of our plan, so did Dr. Alvarez. So we're going to begin that whole district improvement planning process all over again, and we're going to start that process this school year. And we're going to mirror the stakeholder groups from the community, from our own stakeholder groups with teachers and students. We're going to mirror that process again, Brian, and I know that you were very much a part of that. And we were all very proud of the product that was produced, and we're going to begin that process again.
I like to hear that, because as this is being presented to me, I kept on having I have those initiatives, and also the progress monitoring, right? When we look at the failures, I like to see, because failures, you really find out, okay, how do we resolve this? What kind of solutions do we have to take on? What kind of ways do we leverage funding resources? And I could tell that you guys are taking a dive deep in that, because I think big ideas require strong implementation strategies.
And I think what you'll see as we move into that process is that many of the foci from the district prioritization plan will carry into that.
I could see it.
Yeah.
I can see the vision. I can see the implementation. I can see it. I also, I'm very curious to see in step 7, I think my question is, you have all 3 new departments: data assessment and accountability, innovation and grants, and then the diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do we plan to leverage those resources? I kind of want to see how we, I feel like it's a little congested. Like, how are we going to?
So as Molly spoke to, as I spoke to, data, right? Use of data, building data literacy, building in data response. I mean, the The Data and Assessment and Accountability Office is going to be integral in terms of supporting this plan. I mean, this morning we were in executive leadership, we were talking about and strategizing how to build that data capacity and that data literacy across the district. That department is going, at curriculum and instruction and data and assessment accountability departments are going to be central to supporting this plan.
I'm excited. I remember hearing the presentation and learning about that department. I can't wait for just the data equity. I think we've talked about it many times, just the way we're going to be able to actually like target and really take honest looks at ourselves to improve. And I think also for the analysis piece, I feel like we're going to probably identify more systemic factors. I think that's going to like quadruple our little section that you guys put. I think like workforce. I had like the teacher shortage crisis and hiring staff on emergency licenses and waivers. Like I feel like we're gonna have a lot of interesting systemic factors that are universal. But I think it's important to know what they are so we could develop solutions. So I appreciate that. No, I'm very excited to see what the future looks like. I'm going to be very critical. I'm excited. I just, like my colleagues shared, I think, we're excited to see, to get better. That's the goal here, so.
Thank you.
I know everyone's smiling in the back, and we're excited out here, right? They're excited. I think they teachers.
Member Pena.
Thank you for the presentation. It was good and well-informed. I thank you for explaining, the data, because everything's data-driven. My question is, how often are we going to do surveys, and are they going to be anonymous, the surveys? How often are we going to have surveys for teachers and
Sure.
to know where we're at?
Sure.
And what areas to target?
Right. So we don't have the plan yet for when we'll be distributing surveys, but it is critically important that they be anonymous so we can ensure that we're getting honest feedback.
We want honest feedback.
Yep. The piece around, we really need a team to talk about where it fits in around the student survey. So that was the student voice. So we did a lot of planning, and even in the District Prioritization Institute, we had all those steps, but none of them involve like how to center the student voice in our plan. So that's new to like just recently added. So we have to sit down and figure out where that fits in the school year. And then surveys can be very taxing on educators. I'm sure Eric and right, Dr. Magnoli can speak to that. So we have to ensure that they're brief, timely, and at the right time. You're not going to give a survey right before grading. so we just have to come up with a plan, but absolutely they'll be anonymous.
Another thing, if you can elaborate more on professional development on the district level. So are you going to bring the principals, and are they going to be representatives of each school, or can you just elaborate more on that?
Yep. So the arc that we have right now, there's going to be many, because as you mentioned, there are many teams. Like the data team will be running professional development, the innovation team will be running professional development, the DEI will be including professional development. In terms of the district prioritization, we have 10 meetings, monthly meetings for a couple of hours, just centered in the work that I just presented here today. Yeah. So with principals first. So the first we meet with principals, we get their input. Remember, it's constantly iterative.
Yes.
And then a few weeks later, we meet with content specialists in each of the levels, K to 12, and we also bring them here and really dive into the work based with, really with the lens of content. So then they also bring that back to their teams. And then also our coaches are out in the schools all the time in the classroom. And what we're really looking forward to is, as a district, partnering with the teachers, coaches, leaders to be in the classroom so that we can be part of the learning and the teaching, because in this process we learn as well. And so that is kind of the arc of the work. So every month there's a theme, and then we're practicing that theme, we're collecting data on that theme, and then we're meeting again the next month.
And those themes come from everything that was outlined here, in terms of WIDA standards, WIDA scaffolding, all of those things, data literacy, data capacity. Those are the big ideas that will come into that PLC work.
Yeah, actually, if I could just loop it back to Member Dugan, that's an exact example. So in that content, for like ELA, for that ELA block, that's exactly what they'll be talking about. Like, this is our student data, this is where our students fall. Is this ready for tier 2 or is this tier 1 with support? You know, let's look at it. So that's exactly, it's like that setting is to deep dive into the work, specific work.
Thank you. That's good teaching, so thank you. Yeah.
Remarkable.
Okay. The least qualified educators are assigned to the Ls. So I know they'll be on board for the teaching part of it, but how are we going to bring them up before that so that they're not overwhelmed by this?
So actually,
What are we doing for them?
Yeah, thank you. So that's a data point. That's actually a DESE report that they pull, and they look to see who's assigned to what population. The MLE department has been working with school leadership around, like, presenting that data back in the spring to say we have to be more mindful and intentional around the scheduling. I want to say that scheduling is really complicated, and especially in a district when we're during this teacher shortage, I don't think there's any intentionality for that happening. Whether there is or there isn't, it's impact that matters. But I will say that we've brought that data forward, and so the idea then is that the principals will be more mindful. I have to say though that we had a lot of turnover this year, and so when you hire a large staff that's new, you know, you can't really control it. But in terms of what kind of additional professional development do they get? So new teachers have the mentoring program that they're involved in, where they have, and I'm sure you've been through this, where they're assigned with a veteran teacher and they do, you know, classroom observations and sessions. That's all confidential and non-evaluative. And then the MLE support, there's a lot of MLE support for teachers who are teaching the English language learner cohort classes or students as well. But, you know, I mean, that's why we have the district prioritization plan, because it has to be all departments, not just the MLE department that's providing that support.
And that was one thing that I really liked, because, you know, it seems like it's everybody's going to be working together in those different departments, whereas before, you know, SPED really didn't know what was happening in the MLE and so on. So it didn't make for a smooth, I think, for teachers or for anybody, or maybe even the student themselves.
Correct.
But that was one thing. But also, the one thing I liked is pulling all the best practices. I think that's something we haven't been great at, and I think that's really important. So maybe if teachers are moving from spot to spot, you know, it will be a uniform, if you can come up with a best practice, right? And the material, I'm happy about the material, because that's always been a struggle for us. So that's a really good thing. And I'm very glad that they took it off of the schools themselves, because that's a huge project for a principal in a school that goes through a lot of extra. So that piece is really good. And the support in monitor implementation, what do they get in particular for support? One part was the support and monitor implementation. What do they get? I'm just wondering.
Progress monitoring? Is that what you're referring to? Progress monitoring?
Uh-huh.
That progress monitoring is the plan. So there's many layers to it. So it's student data, teacher survey feedback, the coaching model, how effective it is, and then also, you know, the Dr. Shorter, who's come into the data center, has a wide range of experience. So she's interested in looking beyond just the classroom. So what do our hiring practices look like? Who are we hiring? Why are they exiting? Looking at all of that is the idea of monitoring as we're implementing the plan. Are we making a difference? Are we able to retain teachers for longer given the additional professional development? That's the idea of the progress monitor.
Excellent. And just one other thing, when you say we're, you know, building capacity on this, you know, as we go along, we're building on it, but what's the time frame for that?
Oh, that's a great question. So the DESE, when they presented the District Prioritization Institute and this work, Dr. Curry, who's the new Associate Commissioner of the SSOS office, really warned us this is going to be a multi-year process, that we're not going to be able to make massive changes. It's really about building foundational educational practices after coming out of a pandemic, right? And so, so the idea, we're going to set measurable goals. Again, that would go to Dr. Alvarez and Dr. Shorter, really analyzing the data and setting measurable goals that will be annual goals. So that presentation will come, I think, in October.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you to the committee for all the
Thank you.
thoughtful questions and feedback. Thank you. Next item is the Pickering Building project update.
Yes, that's me. So we just wanted to give you an update on where we're at in this process. We continue to move forward in our progress on the MSBA Pickering Middle School building project. There's been a focus on community outreach through the MEPA and environmental justice outreach. A public forum was held on August 30th to share updates on the progress of the schematic design. Tim Baker from Left Field and Adrian Lennon from Environmental Justice Consultant attended the Lynn Side Out event last weekend to share information, answer questions, and to receive feedback from the community. They reported at our Pickering School Building Committee meeting last night that overall the feedback was positive and the community was very responsive. Next steps in this process, we have a second community forum next Wednesday, September 20th at 6 p.m. in the Pickering Middle School auditorium. Communication will be sent out via our school messenger system and social media. That's already been set up, by the way. A community survey is now available through a survey link, which has been shared via school messenger and social media to get feedback and suggestions and questions from the community. Project website has been posted. They have posted project information translatable into our top 5 languages. A draft of the schematic design will be submitted to the school building. Kevin McHugh is in my head. School Building Committee for feedback. That's on October 11th. We'll submit a budget to MSBA on October 12th. School Building Committee meeting for approval to submit the schematic design will be on October 18th. We'll submit the schematic design to MSBA on October 26th, and then MSBA Board of Directors meeting will be held to approve the schematic design, and that hopefully happens on December 13th. And then school building committee meetings following after that are January 17th and February 14th. I provided for you 2 of the slides from last night's board meeting that gives you all of the information on the dates of the meeting in case you're interested, as well as the information on the survey and the public forum that's happening next week.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent, and thank you to everyone involved in that project. Member Gately.
I'd also like to mention that Member Castellanos, myself, and Councilor Starbutt walked around the abutters before the last public meeting. And I was wondering, not all the abutters are in the school system, so how would they know?
Through social media, really, and the website. I mean, I know that, and I apologize for not including you in my update, because I know that you've been working really hard. And I know you've been sharing when you go to the abutters information. And so I would say it's word of mouth in the neighborhood, but it's also social media. Many people are following, the social media.
Can we put it in the paper? Because I did get a a point. Someone called me to say, how would anybody that's not involved know that this meeting was happening the last time? So I believe Mrs. Stapleton said that they put it in the paper, so could we make sure we put it in the paper again, just so we cover all bases? I just don't want to drop the ball on anybody. I want everyone to know what's going on.
Yeah, no, of course, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We all feel the same way. And just to also point out, in addition to the social media, the emails, and of course we can get something in the paper, we flyer the neighborhoods as well. So there's a hard copy out there. Flyering the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll do it if you want.
No, we did it.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Member Castellanos.
Is it the flyers with the QR code and all, like the ones that we talked about last night? Is it going to be the updated information?
I'm not sure which one they need. They put out there, but it was advertising the meeting as opposed to the project. Yeah.
Well, I think that just last night, I think I did express that the information that we need to be sharing is neighbor friendly. Like, not everyone's an engineer, not everyone's familiar with this project. It took me we've been on it for 2 years almost, and it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of brain power to be part of that team, and like to go to a constituent's home on Magnolia and expect them to understand like what an OPM, the language of it. It's just, we want to be friendly with that information, because I think we were giving out, we had the project information, but it was just a lot of work. I think it was just bringing that ambassadorship to this project in our community, that it's being that's being impacted, is vital, because ultimately they're going to spread accurate information, because there was also a lot of debunking. Like when we canvassed, we did multiple canvassing, and the same rumors kept on popping up.
Yeah, same
Like they're like, are they going to take my house? And I think we went to the same people's houses, like, no, that's not. And it's like, well, that's the rumor. Well, it's not the rumor. And then we say, go to the website. Like, well, what if we don't use the internet? So it just is always like a domino effect of communication fragments like that get broken up. But I just think and I understand that. I think Laura and Drago addressed that last night. We have a strategy. I just want to make sure that we emphasize that piece.
Yeah, no, it's important. For any big project, there's going to be those rumors, and it's all of our responsibility to put out the right information. So that's certainly our priority. And we are holding these forums in part to be able to direct folks to a place where they can get that kind of reliable information and have their questions answered, specific questions answered. So definitely we'll continue that. And I think we can certainly get something else in the paper, but I just to point out that we've also, when we've done the previous stories, have one of the benefit of doing both of these forums, I think we discussed this at some point before, is that we've advertised both of them along the way. So the story that was about the last forum also mentioned that we have this one coming up as well. Also I think the ask would be for everyone in their networks to let people know that what the right information is, where they can get it, and opportunities like this forum that's coming up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Member Dugan on the policy subcommittee.
Yes. So on August 22nd, we met as a policy subcommittee, and there was a motion to put forward policy JIH to the full committee. The title of the policy is the Protective Sweep, Student Searches, Questionings, and Interrogations. So that was put forward to the full committee.
Great. Dr. Alvarez, you want to?
Yes, I would like to share, along with my team, just to give everyone context around what we discussed that evening before it was brought to the full committee. So the safety of our students and staff precedes learning. We all know that. Therefore, we will continue to develop proactive measures to anticipate accidents and emergency preparedness, minimizing administrative response times and decreasing the number of incidents in schools. Specifically speaking to this protective sweeps policy, the data trends in increasing weapons on campuses and subsequent disciplinary action. The policy was developed to be proactive and less reactive to incidents in our schools. It is our primary goal to ensure the safety of all of our students and staff within our schools, specifically our secondary schools, where we not only proposed the protective sweeps policy in front of you this evening, but we have also made significant investments in support staff to implement a future restorative practices plan, progressive discipline, and a new state-of-the-art security system that uses cutting-edge artificial intelligence. A committee drafted the policy patterned by the suggested language from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. We also wanted to make certain that we balance the rights of students, but place great importance on the security of students and staff in schools. Aside from this policy, we will set high expectations of student behavior to mitigate incidents that have significantly increased over the last 2 school years. The passing of this policy by the school committee this evening would allow the Office of the Superintendent to set forth administrative procedures to conduct random protective sweeps for illegal weapons and items that threaten the safety of others. These items have no place in our school buildings, and the procedures would allow us to decriminalize student behaviors through restorative practices and implement steps to provide clinical interventions supported by evidence-based research methodology. I'd like to pass it over to Ms. Ruggiero, who's going to discuss the number of incidents with weapons that we have had.
So I just want to reiterate what Dr. Alvarez just said in her opening, that we are really trying to be proactive versus reactive in our approach, balance the rights of our students and security of school, and setting the expectations of what may or may not be brought to school. The rationale for the data, when we make decisions or recommendations, we're looking at data. It is a focus for us this year. Adding Dr. Shorter to the team, it clearly we are putting data at the forefront, and so every decision revolves around data, and this is no different. There has been an uptick in weapons, either in our school or students possessing weapons outside of school and getting arrested. All of it impacts school safety and school discipline. Weapons-based disciplinary infractions doubled each year from 2018-19 through 2023, school year 2023. School year 2023, we had 66 weapon infractions in our schools. In 18-19, we had 7. So we've jumped a great deal in infractions. Those 66 weapon infractions, we had 2 handgun, 8 other firearm, 22 large knife, 5 small knife, 5 other knife, and 24 other weapons. That's a huge jump, 7 to 14, and then 1 during COVID, and then to 29 to 66 into school year 2023. I can give you further detail regarding the overall data. The 2 handguns, we were very curious, and Charlie Gallo, our compliance officer, did some research to try and see exactly what that was. We found that one of the cases was actually a miscode. It was actually a student outside of school. It wasn't a weapon on site. It was a student that used a weapon or had a weapon outside of school, and it really should have been coded as a felony, so it was a miscode. And then the other one was over 2 years prior, and I don't think we ever really could find it.
No, there was one that we one of the 66, I think, that we couldn't nail down.
Yeah. The other categories, including numerous items, some examples from the data. So when we talk about like other weapons, things like that, it's razor blades, mace, an Orby gun, plastic knife, ordinary objects used as dangerous weapons, like someone hitting someone with the laptop, like that's the category of other items. For further details regarding the 2023 grade level data, the breakdown of the 66 for 22-23, High school had 25 of those infractions, middle school had 29, elementaries had 11. And at the elementary level, the 11 infractions, some of those are like throwing chairs or classroom objects, but there are some knives and that are real and homemade. So for example, a kitchen knife passed between students or a child making a homemade knife using like popsicle sticks. That data really spoke to us, and the priority of our schools being a safe environment for learning, we really needed to think as a district of how we could make that happen. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Goris, and she'll share the overview of the process.
Thank you. Deputy Ruggiero, I witnessed this process as I entered the school district in July. Happy to be here. We reviewed the Massachusetts Association of School Committee model policies in order to have a frame of reference for what other districts do around protective sweeps. We did convene 2 meetings. Those meetings consisted of stakeholders such as principals, administrators, and law enforcement. We reviewed and revised drafts prepared by a compliance officer, Charlie Gallo, and we also received some input and review from our attorney, Katie Meinelt, who really assists us with student discipline, discrepancies, and violations of regulations as it pertains to the Massachusetts school discipline law. The adoption by the school committee policy subcommittee on August 22nd was overwhelming. Thank you so much for those who are in the policy subcommittee who took your time to review our draft, provide feedback, and ask really important questions about the impact of this policy and in what ways were we looking at our next steps on procedurals and protocols to support us being proactive and not reactive, to support our students' rights and also our students' safety. On August 22nd, we did amend in changing the last paragraph. The 4th paragraph, we changed the last phrase to include "and will be conducted and or overseen by building-based or district-level administrators." So the protective sweeps would not be done or conducted by law enforcement officials and will not be conducted by teachers, solely school administrators and district-level administrators. Okay. I'd also like to reiterate that this is about setting expectations of what may or may not be brought to school. We wanted to make sure that our students understand and our students and our families feel that it is a top priority for our students and staff to be safe in our school buildings, and these protective sweep would remind them that bringing weapons to school is not an option. I'm going to pass it over to Superintendent Dr. Alvarez, who has some closing remarks on the process.
I do want to just recognize the team that spent, even though we had 2 meetings that were lengthy, we did spend a number of hours individually reviewing the language and doing some research. So I do want to thank Principal Dunn from Classical, Principal Gallo from Lynn Vocational Technological Institute, Mara Jurgen from FECTO, Kevin Ritterhouse from Pickering Middle, Julie Lou from Breed Middle, Officer Mackin, the Mayor's Office, who also provided us some feedback, and our administrators, definitely our deputy superintendents, our new administrator, Bobby Bishop, for DEI from that perspective, and of course our compliance department, Charlie Gallo, Lauren Walsh, and Member Dugan and Member Magnolia for your feedback that evening as well. So I wanted to thank all of you for your insight, your support, and your participation in this process.
Is there a second to the motion, and we can do the discussion after that?
Second.
Great. Discussion? Yeah, Member Dugan.
Right, so thank you. And I will say, publicly, I am for this. I think it's a necessary thing for our schools. But since the 22nd meeting, I do have a couple questions that not so much for me, but just to get out in the public to make sure people are aware of all of this. And one of them, Deputy Superintendent Goris, you mentioned that these are all going to be done by teachers, people that are familiar to the students. I'm sorry, administrators. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It might back up, sorry. Administrators, people that are familiar to the students. But I wonder if you could just describe what it would look like, in a school. What would it entail? What would it, like at Classical, what would that look like? What would a sweep look like?
Sure. So one of the things that we would do next is we would convene the committee once more to start developing the administrative process of what that actually looks like with input from principals, from Mr. Gallo, from the stakeholders involved. And so typically what a random sweep looks like is you are searching not students, right? Because it's not a targeted search. You're searching backpacks. You're searching a room for items that should not be obviously on a school campus. And so that would be done randomly in different 6 through 12 settings.
Okay. And then I guess my next question would be actually Attorney Greenspan. Have you had any experience with anything like this? And if you have, is there language that would protect our administrators, that you could maybe enlighten us to that would protect them in case of some type of accusation?
I have spoken to Mr. Gallo during the process to go over some of the issues regarding the searches, which we've discussed and agreed upon. The only experience that I've had in the area of protective sweeps is occasionally there are sweeps involving lockers with dogs and things of that nature. And I think I told Mr. Gallo that generally my experience is those are coordinated through the district attorney's office if you're going to do that kind of level of a random search with looking for drugs or something like that with dogs. That's usually coordinated through the district attorney's office.
Okay. So again, I just want to be on public record. I am supportive of this. I think it's going to deter things. I think it's going to, keep kids safer. It's going to make kids feel, safer at school. And I think that's a really important thing because learning cannot happen if, kids aren't feeling safe, if their social emotional needs aren't being met. And I think this is a good step toward that. So I thank the team. I thank everybody involved. That's all I have.
Member Castellanos, Member Pena.
So I actually I was familiar with the sheriff's office and DA's office on those sweeps because I actually was able to, I was an intern. I got to see it live actually at one of the high schools, and it was very coordinated, there's a very delicate process to how they select the location. This is, I think my question is, so if we're gonna have administrators, like is there professional development? Who's gonna train you guys to be doing the searching piece of it? Because if you unravel, because you're looking for something. What if you find a firearm? What if you find drugs, Class A, Class B? What? And if we're not coordinating, again, and that goes back to the due process. So if you do have a discovery, can you walk me through that piece of it?
Sure. So when we talk about developing that plan, there's a couple of stages to that. One is, what is the restorative practices plan when we find an item that does not belong in a school? Depending on what that is and the level of the infraction, obviously, right? We would definitely put those steps in place. So if a student, for example, if we didn't find a weapon, but we found a considerable amount of drugs, like what is that next step that needs to be taken and the interventions that need to take place with the student? Perhaps it's offering support, and maybe that student needs to see a clinician, social worker, interventions outside even of the actual school setting to deal with a scenario where they may express that they need support and help. It's really about decriminalizing situations in terms of how are we addressing the root cause of what it is that we find. So if it is a weapon, and how do we handle those things, we so I can say specifically that not only will we seek training for the team, the training that I have specifically goes back probably more than 17 years, because protective sweeps are not a new type of a procedure in where you have secondary schools and random sweeps where you either have a team of administrators or a dedicated team by a district that is actually conducting these sweeps. So if there was to be something that presented itself to be dangerous, right, we would obviously, I mean, there are steps that need to be put in place to protect the safety of even the administrators that are conducting that sweep. So once that plan is created, we will openly share it with the school committee and be very transparent about it with our students as well as our families and community.
Thank you. So right now, we're looking at unannounced, announced, and then random. Are those?
So it's unannounced.
So unannounced. So I have a conflict within, so this is going to be, so we say that the teachers aren't going to be involved, but when we talk about source of information, teachers talk, and how are we going to protect our staff from that process? Because if it's unannounced and I don't know, I think the administrators need to figure out a safeguard to remove our staff from that, because our staff, they're going to be with these students throughout the year.
Sure.
Also, when students see that, going back to resident Paz, I think the trauma versus safety. I think anyone seeing that, I grew up out here and I've been searched before. It's still uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. And when you see it, if you think no one's pulling out their phone and saying some kid got searched in my room today, that you're out. That there needs to be a plan to debrief the kids.
Sure. Member Castellanos, I will reiterate that the searches are not on student bodies necessarily. Backpacks, possessions, correct.
So a backpack,
which is not like a person, right?
If someone's searching my backpack, though, that's still my property. It's still some kids. I think the generation of kids. I know my nephew would not like that. I know family members of mine would not like their backpack searched. So I think there's value to what I'm saying.
Sure.
I think there's that trauma piece. Again, going if you're from the neighborhood, if you're from out there in the streets, it's not the most comfortable situation to get searched.
Understood.
So not your person, but you still have. It's still like, what if it just feels uncomfortable. So I think there was some valid.
I
think what Resident Paz said was very valid.
Absolutely, but the trauma of seeing a student being stabbed in a hallway far outweighs the conversation that we need to have with adolescents and young adults about the dangers of bringing weapons to school.
So that's not what I'm saying. So I want to just that's not exactly.
Okay.
So that's not where we're going with that, and I don't think that's appropriate, because I actually that really was tragic and traumatizing to myself.
Absolutely.
That's not exactly. I'm all for proactive measures. So that's not appropriate to say that. That's not even close to where I'm going with it. I'm identifying some discrepancies within the policies and how you implement it. So to go and say that I'm not referring to that situation. I agree. I hear from staff, I hear from families, I hear from everybody. I went to multiple funerals this weekend. I buried family and friends. So I'm sitting here, I'm serious about this. So I'm just trying to vet this out to make sure that it's implemented in a fair and equitable way. That's all I'm saying.
We appreciate your feedback. And again, if this is passed, then we will create those administrative procedures to put in place.
Okay.
Member Pena, Member Gately.
Well, I just want to say, I'm for this. I'm afraid that, I'm just concerned about, this being abused and targeted with some kids. So we got to make sure that the random process is really made in an equitable way, and I appreciate the clarification that it's not anybody's person, locker rooms and backpacks. My concern about it is with our L's, with immigration. Are we protecting our children? What's up? Because let's say somebody doesn't have a weapon, but they might have a substance or something. I mean, are we gonna? And there's different levels of intervention. Are we protecting our kids with immigration? Have you checked into those things?
I have not. No.
Maybe that's something we want to look into.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Attorney Gallo.
Thank you. I'd be happy to speak to that. I think it's an excellent question. So this committee a couple of years ago, or I think really a predecessor committee partly, and I know Mayor Nicholson at that time on policy subcommittee, the resolutions to affirm Lynn Public Schools as safe and welcoming sanctuaries for all students. And so we baked into this policy on page 2 reference to that specific policy, and in no way would we're not looking for immigration status. We're looking for contraband.
Okay.
And so this is, but just to be absolutely clear, that's not the thing that we're looking for, and specifically stated that. And I think on the larger issue too, not just of that, one important protected class, or one important group of persons, but others, some of the things we've thought about it are included in this policy, and what you'd be doing tonight is giving the green light to start those administrative procedures. We're going to identify appropriate administrators, create protocols to keep the administrators safe and respect students' dignity. We're going to establish practices that take into account things like sex and gender identity, religion, ethnicity, provide for trainings in those areas. So those are all things that we've talked about, I think. In coming together with this, I think it's a great point.
Yeah. Also, I just want to state, note that I know safety, and student behavior is a priority. I'm a parent of a student, and I remember getting a call from my son. The school's on lockdown, and I was terrified. So I'm all for this because, like you say, we got to dictate. We got to have a proactive approach to this. We can't sit back and react to when things happen. We need to be proactive and maybe setting a standard of what's allowed and what's not allowed, because, like, just to echo what Member Dugan said, teachers can't focus on instructional learning when we're worried about student safety and their safety. So I'm for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gately, Member Magnolia.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask about was the procedure, because that is definitely what's missing here is, how is it going to look? What steps do the administrators take? I didn't know if we could have a little public involvement on the procedure as Ms. Paz has requested, public parent input. But I am for this. I sat there on the 22nd, I believe I was here.
Yeah, you were.
And this is really crucial for our students to feel safe every day. Some people call me and they say to me, I am afraid to send my child to your schools. I do not want my child in your school because we are afraid. And this basically is just a policy that's going to protect all our students and staff. The procedures we can work out, we'll hammer it out, but it has to be clear and concise. And public involvement on those procedures probably would be beneficial. But I don't know, when I get those calls, and people have called me, and they have told me that they're afraid for their kids to go to certain schools, and I just thought on the 22nd of August that this was a good plan of action to help our students be safe in our schools, because how can you learn if you don't feel safe? So I think it's a procedural thing that we need to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gately, Member Magnolia.
Thank you. So I want to echo what Member Castellano said about the potential sort of trauma to the student. And I think that it's really important that there be some nod to how protective sweeps have happened in other places in terms of how students are prepared for this. I don't think it's going to be hammered out in the procedures at all, but I think that as we look forward to look at best practices for this, is this an all-student assembly where, protective sweeps are explained, where students understand that, that this is how it's going to happen, so that the randomness of it doesn't itself constitute the trauma. I think often, so I grew up in Washington, D.C. We still had bomb drills because I was 3/4 of a mile from the Capitol building, right? When I said this to someone recently, they're like, but you're not old enough for that. And I said, well, when you're 3/4 of a mile from the Capitol building, that continued through the Cold War, right? This is not traumatic for me. I was prepared for this my whole life since I was, in kindergarten, right? This is the thing, is that what to me is traumatic about my child doing lockdown drills is not traumatic to her because it's been her whole life. And I think that it's really important that whatever those practices are that prepare students, that scaffold, this is what you can expect. I don't think that this is any more or less traumatic than when I did my student internship in Springfield and we had to do this going through the metal detectors every day and we could only carry a clear plastic pouch. This was in the 90s like this, that was pretty traumatic too. So again, I don't think that given this reality, there is any version that isn't going to ping students, except us understanding that this is going to ping students. And so how can we provide the scaffolding to trauma-informed practices to help students understand? So that's my first point. My second point is I would very much like the administration, even though we do not need to review procedure, to please bring procedure back to this committee after it has been established. And then once this is actually implemented 1 year out, to report back to the school committee to say, this is how it's going. This is what we're finding. I want to see the data that specifically says, this is what we're finding with this policy versus what we had before. And I would love, although I don't know that I can require this, to see the breakdown of students by race and by gender to ensure that this is equitable. If it is just black and brown boys who are being targeted here, then we know we have a structural problem. Okay, so we need to be able to look at that data, have honest conversations about who maybe is expressing some implicit bias and where we can actively work to go against that. So I'm supporting this policy with these reservations and with these caveats to ensure that our students are protected not only in terms of their body, but their psyche as well.
I just want to add something so publicly it's clear. Just because we approve this tonight doesn't mean tomorrow we're going to go in and do protective sweeps. We're going to go through all these procedures. We're going to make sure this is done properly. Again, just so for public consumption, make sure people understand that. This approval tonight, should it go through, does not mean these are going to happen anytime soon.
That's correct. It means that we will begin the process of developing the procedures for what is the administrative implementation process and what are the restorative practices that we need to have for students going forward.
Member Castellanos.
I would like to add a caveat of that for the administrators who are doing those sweeps, I think there's a lot of law and procedure involved with that piece of it. And I can imagine that we are seeking guidance from Attorney Greenspan on what that looks like to prepare our administrators to perform that duty. It's different. So I think that's the piece that we want to, because we want to respect and not get ourselves in issues legally. So I think that's something that I'm really reserved on what that's going to look like. But I do look forward to hearing how this all unfolds.
Thank you.
I just had I think the legality part, isn't it? Law enforcement can't,
no.
And if law enforcement, they can't search or do anything with juveniles, correct?
Correct. The protective policy sweep is specifically for school administrators to implement.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring that up for clarification.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to thank the policy subcommittee members Dugan and Magnolia, and thank Superintendent Alvarez and the whole team that worked on this. Obviously, I think we all care deeply about the safety of our students, and these are sensitive and really important issues. And so I think also grateful for the important feedback on how to balance a lot of these concerns and do this in a way for it to be successful. I mean, I think part of the goal here, or the goal of being proactive in creating protective sweeps, is for people not to bring weapons in the first place. And that requires a lot of communication and support, and I know that will be the goal. And I think we got some great feedback tonight, and we'll continue to get feedback from relevant stakeholders about how to do this the right way so that it is successful, and really appreciate everyone's help in doing that. Roll call, please.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
Member Pena?
Yes.
Mayor Nicholson?
Yes. Thank you. Would entertain a motion to amend the agenda to move the executive session to the end.
Still move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. So we will jump to this letter from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
So we received on July 27th a letter addressed to the Lynn Public Schools regarding Chapter 70 funds for net school spending from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It basically said that they had made an error in what their actual financial reporting was, that they had incorrectly, on February 16th of 2023, they had incorrectly included $917,823 in charter transportation costs for funding year 22 in our net school spending calculation, and that they had overstated our net school spending. And so therefore, they had to make an adjustment to the end of year financial report. And so at this time, they explained that there would have been a shortfall, but in actuality, we are in a carryover of $300,699, and so, I'm sorry, in a carryover of $301,699,170, and I will let our business administrator, Mr. Kevin McHugh, elaborate on what this means for us.
It's great when it's not my problem. So, as everybody knows, every year, actually, when we started, we do our state report from the last fiscal year, and we do an end-of-the-year report. So just to take it back a step, they the state pre-populates the charter school tuitions and transportation costs, as well as school choice. They put those costs into the report. We don't put them in. So as the superintendent said, they actually put in the wrong amount in tune, it cost us a little over $700,000. They inflated it by $700,000. So the net school spending, we're still under the net school spending, but the letter actually is telling you that we were short, and the carryover gets added to the FY23, which they did, and they're projecting we're right at net school spending, which until we complete the report, we won't know where we exactly end, but we are teetering, I think it was $187,000 over net school spending right now, projected, but that always changes based on actual expenditures and things that were projected maybe didn't happen or happened. So we're okay right now, and we're always allowed to be 5% below, but I know the city's always been good about trying to keep us at or a little bit above, and if there's been any shortfall, we've always been given to make up the amount of money to get us back in track to where we've been for the last few years. And with the new mayor, we've done that every year, so we've been in good shape. So we'll know more probably. Lately we used to get these letters in December, but as the superintendent said, the first letter came in February of last year, so they've been dragging out. But we probably won't know, hopefully, to December where we end up with this year. I mean, for last year, where we are going with this year. But As I said, I think the city has always been good about making a difference up to keep us where we need to be, so the funding's going to always be there. So this is just more informational. It's not something that we really have to worry about at this time. So we'll monitor, and once we get the final new letter, we'll come back and tell you either we're over or if we're under, what the plan will be to address it at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so the superintendent's report. I know everyone's excited and waiting for this, so. So I'm delighted to share with you the exciting news that the last 2 weeks of school have marked a significant milestone for all of us in our LPS educational journey. And as we've welcomed back thousands of students, each brimming with enthusiasm and a thirst for knowledge, the energy and determination radiating from our students has invigorated the entire educational community. The eagerness to learn and achieve reinforces our commitment to providing them with the best possible student educational experience. At the heart of our mission lies a clear and compelling vision to serve our diverse population of students and to continually evolve current practices, adapt, and innovate to meet their needs effectively. As we begin this new academic year, we resolve to make necessary changes and enhancements, both large and small, that will ensure coherence in our educational programs and services. Our dedication to fostering an environment that empowers students to reach their fullest potential is at the forefront of all of our endeavors. This school year, we have a focused and clear commitment to conducting thorough assessments of administrative and operational systems to identify areas that can be streamlined and enhanced for efficiency and clarity of process. This will lead to better outcomes for our students. The establishment of a culture rooted in data-driven decision-making. We will implement data collection and analysis protocols to inform district-wide strategies, ensuring that our actions are well-informed and impactful. The creation of regular communication channels, which will facilitate seamless information flow among all stakeholders. This will enhance transparency and accountability, allowing us to work together more effectively. Our instructional priorities will be anchored in instructional design, which will prioritize innovation and design thinking to promote programmatic equity. Design thinking is a mindset approach to learning, collaborating, and problem solving. This will allow us to collectively identify challenges, gather information, and develop solutions. Clarity in systems and structures to ensure alignment that supports equitable student outcomes, and a strong focus on Tier 1 instruction, tiered supports, multi-tiered systems of support, and equity cycles of improvement and data decisions. Together, as a united educational community, we will work tirelessly to nurture the growth and development of our students, enabling them to thrive and excel in their academic pursuits. With the support and collaboration of all stakeholders, we are confident that we will make significant strides achieving our shared vision, ensuring that our students receive the exceptional education they deserve. I want to address the tragic events that have deeply impacted our community in the last few weeks. As the LPS family grapples with the profound loss, confusion, and heartache, we stand together to process those difficult emotions. We have joined forces with the city to provide essential resources and support to those affected, emphasizing that we are a united front in the face of adversity. In times like these, we are reminded of the strength and resilience of our community. Reflecting upon these challenging circumstances, I'm reminded of a powerful quote by the esteemed American author and Nobel Prize Award winner Toni Morrison. In 2020, she urged us to get to work. These words resonate as they encapsulate the determination and unity we must embody during trying times. Dr. Morrison said that in times of dread, artists must get to work. Yet her words seem relevant for all of those who need the motivation and hope to continue to create the exciting and appropriate learning environments for our students. She specifically stated, "There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language, and this is how civilizations heal." While we mourn and heal, it is equally important that we channel our collective grief into meaningful action. supporting one another, and making positive changes in our community. Together, we can forge a path toward healing and progress, ensuring that the memory of those we have lost remains a source of inspiration to propel us forward. Simultaneously, we must send a clear message that violence in our schools and our community is not acceptable. Our schools are a home and a safe place for all of us, and we will continue to be proactive in developing safety and security measures, restorative practices, and progressive discipline. Most importantly, we must focus on the 16,377 students we educate daily. The students who engage with their teachers, make the right choices, come prepared to learn, and put forth maximum effort each day. We will continue challenging them in their daily learning and celebrate them as we provide the best student experience possible. In closing, I want to send a sincere thank you to all the teachers, all staff, ISD, administrators, and the school committee that help prepare our schools and learning spaces to welcome all students for the opening of schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a motion for the executive session? If you could read the items there.
I move that we enter executive session in order to approve the executive session minutes from June 29th, 2023, that we go into executive session to discuss strategies with respect to collective bargaining relative to the Lynn Teachers Union. The discussion of these matters, which involve strategy in an open meeting, may have a detrimental effect on and compromise the bargaining position of the public body.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
Member Pena?
Yes.
Mayor Nicholson?
Yes.
Can I go to the bathroom?
Almost there. I just have to. No,
Come back into session.
Oh, I think it's mine.
I usually stack the breakfast when I have a long day.
Lenny?
You're just off.
I get to eat. I read all the prep for this meeting, coming in and just.
Is there a motion to enter regular session?
Motion to return.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
Member Pena?
Yes.
Mayor Nicholson?
Yes. 2 agreements to approve in regular session. The first is an MOA between the school committee and the teachers union to extend a increase in substitute pay.
So moved?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
Member Pena?
Yes.
Mayor Nicholson?
Yes. Second is an MOA between the school committee and the Lynn Teachers Union to increase the drama stipend for high school.
So moved?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
Member Pena?
Yes.
Mayor Nicholson?
Yes. While we're signing that, I also wanted to remind folks that we are hosting an event tomorrow night at Ingalls Elementary School at 5 o'clock. Would extend that invitation to everyone, including the whole team here. Some of the issues we talked about tonight and the broader goals around healing and next steps to achieve all our goals of keeping everyone safe. And we appreciate Ingalls for hosting us.
Excuse me, the one you handed doesn't have Lenny's name on it.
Okay.
We'll start the Sunday.
Okay.
Sure.
This one.
Yeah, they got one. Yeah. Yep. We got one.
He's there.
We got one. That copy didn't have it.
Okay, this is, we'll shred this one.
Chair?
Yep.
Is a motion to adjourn in order? or
I think
do
we were
need-
going to finish this,
Okay.
so it's an open session, but
Okay.
Sign and roll.
I didn't know if we could adjourn and sign, or if we had to sign and then adjourn.
So we just sign and.
Okay, so
now it is.
I move that we adjourn.
All right. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Pass that back to Howard.
Where's the second one?
Where you've been, it doesn't matter what the scar, it doesn't matter what the sin, it doesn't matter how you fell. Somewhere along the way, there is healing for your life today. And it heals everything along the way. I've tasted and know that for every broken heart